All right, there's still a few people joining, but I think we're going to go ahead and get started. First of all, hello. Thanks for joining us for our webinar today on how to secure global data access and accelerate digital transformations. First, to go over some logistics, we'll be handling any questions during the webinar through the Zoom webinar question interface. You should be able to type out any questions, and we'll either try to answer them in the course of the webinar, or we'll answer them at the end in a dedicated Q&A section. You should be able to see the button for asking any questions at the bottom of the Zoom web app application. Also, just to let everyone know, this webinar will be recorded and will be available online as soon as we have finished processing the recording after the webinar. Everyone who has registered and or attended this webinar will get a link to that recording once we have uploaded it and made it available online. You can share this link with anyone who you think would be interested in the webinar. So with that, going into our agenda for today, I'm going to give a brief introduction of who I am, as well as introduce Deepak, who I'm very pleased to say has been able to join us today. He's going to talk through a Boeing case study and how they secure global data access and have used the NextLabs products to accelerate digital transformation. And then I'll give a brief overview of the NextLabs Zero Trust data-centric security suite. I'll talk a little bit about our solutions for those of you who may not know us quite as well. So yes, as I mentioned, I'm very pleased that Deepak is able to join me today. He's the head of strategy and architecture for supply chain ERP systems at Boeing, and we love having him as a customer. My name is Tony Burning. I'm senior product manager here at NextLabs, and have been with NextLabs for about 3.5 years, working across our suite of products. So with that, I will actually turn it over to Deepak and take it away.
Yeah, this is Deepak Bokalam. Thanks everybody for joining the call. I hope I'm audible. Tony,
Yep, you sound great.
No.
You sound great.
Yeah, great. Thanks everybody for joining the call again. Just like Tony was mentioning, right? A quick intro. I head the strategy and architecture team for the Boeing company, and I joined Boeing about 8 years back. And before that, right, was the integral part of large-scale business transformation and leadership roles. So I've done a lot of this SAP enabled large-scale business transformation throughout my career. And within Boeing right now, we do have a large-scale multi-year business transformation, right, with SAP as a backbone. And then right with the nature of the business, especially in the aerospace and defense space, heavily regulated, highly data compliant related workloads, this becomes an integral part of how to start enabling security ground up, whether it is the IAM side, I don't know whether it is on the application security constructs, right? This is always going to be very important for us. And the key here is, right, when we do this large scale SAP backed business transformations, right, and the strategy almost becomes very foundational. How many instances are we going to host? How are we going to host defense and commercial data, and then manufacturing and services data? And by the way, if it is defense data, we have different types of information right now that are categorized, whether it is the CUI, CTIs, highly sensitive personal information, financial information, then famous, infamous export control, and then the ITAL, and then they have all this FedRAMP related markings, right, in terms of IL3, IL4, and IL5. So when you have all these information types and very sensitive rules in terms of how we have to protect and the policies surrounding it, right, and application security related, it becomes very important. So I think, this particular journey, what we wanted to share is relatively how in the defense space, we have set up our application security stack using standard SAP capabilities, and that we can't move away, but then we want to layer in additional capabilities on top of that, which is where NextLabs comes in, and we want to relatively introduce NIST-based ABAC framework into our architecture foundation to achieve whatever we want. And I think that's what we'll be going through. So if you want to go to the next slide, right? That will be there. Next one, please. Right. So again, right now from an agenda standpoint, right, we're just going to go through what do we do in the Boeing defense space and security business unit, right? And then we'll go through what is the starting point of this journey where we introduce ABAC controls on top of standard RBAC, and what was the rationale and what kind of problems are we solving for the business and so on and so forth. Go to the next slide, please. A little bit of background around the Boeing and Boeing company. Everybody knows that we do produce all our famous commercial side of planes, right? But Boeing as company has 3 business units, right? And the Boeing commercial airplanes, and the second one is Boeing Defense and Space Systems, right? That is the second business unit. Both of them primarily support the manufacturing space, and then we also got aftermarket services called Boeing Global Services, and that particular division or business unit supports both defense and commercial side of services needed for all the products and programs that we actually support. Within the Boeing Defense Space and Security, some highlights, right? About 24 when they have about $25 billion revenue, headquartered in Arlington. We got about employees all over the world, 22 countries, 50 US states, 18,000 plus employees, and so on and so forth. And we got roughly about 60 to 70 programs, right? And the flagship programs and so on and so forth. I can see the vertical lift division, the space division, and then the tanks division, and so on and so forth that are represented in this particular year. So technically, we got about 8 divisions within the BDS space, and then obviously employees all over the world, and then we also have supporting personnel that also come from our partners, right? Whether it's the consulting space or the contractor space or the system integrator space. So I know there's so many other extension to Boeing employees, right? We also have. Let's go to the next slide. So some core concepts of how we are running our business and digital transformation, as I was providing our the context leading up to this particular conversation. Today, Boeing as a company right now, we're pretty proliferated or fragmented in terms of how our systems landscape have evolved. It's a blend of car solutions that are relatively old and ready to retire. And then we also have acquired a lot of companies through M&A, and as we acquired, and we also inherited some of the application portfolio. And then right over the course of the last 30, 40 years, right, the amount of processes and how the process proliferation has happened, it's pretty, again, right, it's also very inefficient in terms of standardizing across the enterprise, right, or across the BUs. The whole idea of this particular business transformation is, we wanted to go and standardize our process portfolio and then improve the process efficiencies, right? And the second part is in our application architecture. It's pretty fragmented, and we want to consolidate and have standard portfolio of platforms and solutions, right? And whether it's SaaS solutions or applications that we are going to host, right? And again, we're just going to consolidate that. And then as we do that, right, we also want to eliminate and retire applications that are technology risk for us in our landscape, right? And that's what the whole goal of this particular transformation. As we do that, right, once we standardize that, typical benefits that you realize are in the productivity, scale, and then how do we make sure we are agile enough to address and meet some of the business environment shifts that we see in this particular space, especially when you take the geopolitical considerations, right? And the business environment shifts pretty rapidly, and then especially if you look at the needs within the Boeing defense space, right, and the overarching defense market. We do have Department of Defense from not only in the U.S. space but also in other countries relatively putting clear mandates around, hey, the platform readiness should be all digital, and they also need to be very futuristic in terms of, hey, adopt the cloud, make sure zero trust architecture principles are embraced, and relatively set the foundation for the future, including the thread and print constructs, right? And those are all core parts of our foundational principles. So we can go to the next slide. And the business transformation that we have is a multi-year journey across all BUs and also enterprise functions. What we want to clearly focus here is how we layered in and introduced NextLabs ABAC controls on top of standard SAP RBAC controls. From a scope standpoint, right, and especially in Boeing defense space, we kind of have segmented into two parts, right? And first particular scope levers are get the direct procurement related capabilities for the whole of Boeing defense and space as the starting point of our journey. We've got about 32 applications, and we want to that we are integrating as part of the landscape, and we are also retiring for this direct procurement phase 1 and phase 2 journey. The phase 1 is a pilot that we went live last year, and phase 2, because of the significant size of how we wanted to go and march towards fully putting the future state, is going in multiple phases in 2025, right? And we are rolling that out. And then the manufacturing baseline, right? Again, that's the big one where we are partnering with engineering and manufacturing teams to relatively go out and deliver over the course of the next 4 to 5 years. So just some highlights of where we are at, right? As you see, PLM and MOB, we are tying very closely with those teams to make sure that we have amendments go live on the manufacturing portion too, right? So that is about the scope of this particular project, and we go to the next slide and kind of gives you the overarching process view of what is included in the procurement, direct procurement scope. Obviously, source to contract and typical P2P flow, right, from supplier lifecycle management, source to contract, right, and then the actual procurement execution, right, request to receipt, and then the payment part, right, tied to P2P, and then the financials associated to that, right. Pretty much each organization, we have a lot of participants here, and there is a way to go about doing this. We relatively have used the value stream approach and work stream approach, and you see the work streams relatively tying up to the business process master level 2 processes, right, in terms of what they are at high level. And you see on the left side about we have significant amount of supply requirements coming through from services as well as from the manufacturing space. And that's why when you see that 25 demand systems, those are the ones, right? And then we have different applications are in a same application, multiple instances that have been spread over the course of the last 30, 40 years that we are still working through to go out and integrate and consolidate. As we do that, right, we have started the journey by integrating that. You see that we have Wortex for tax, Alpha Scope for document management, and then the core application portfolio in SAP is about S4HANA, BW, and then GTS is in scope, but that is more of phase 2 around the manufacturing baseline space. And the key here, right, because of defense nature, you also see that compliance and process are very important. Got to align and comply to cost accounting standards, and you see some of those key areas in terms of how we want to apply the compliance rule set, and these are very important, right? And that's how we sign up for business with our defense customers. So MMI's governance is extremely important, and the data segregation, right? In today's world, the applications are white space, and predominantly the team that actually supports in terms of enhancements or sustainment are very US-centric, and then the applications are white space, right? And Boeing and Boeing US and so on and so forth. So when you combine all of this, right, we have significant amount of application portfolio, and we want to modernize or land on SAP for our process transformation, and then we all have compliance and process rule set. And we also wanted to go out and leverage our global talent, right, to go out and implement and also support these applications both on business and the IT side. Not only Boeing IT team members, right, Boeing business team members in here, because of those spread across the international countries. And so the problem statement is, how do we make sure that we have a framework to address the future, not only in the production space, but also while we implement the solutions, right, over the course of for the course of last 2 to 3 years, plus another 5 to 6 years journey. So please go to the next slide. I think, that kind of sets the context of, how we wanted to go out and address the application security constructs here. This gives you the application architecture landscape, right? And if you look at what we did in the last slide, right? Last slide was giving you the high level scope. Here it is about putting all these functions together to kind of have that end-to-end value stream view, but more from an application architecture dimension. We have SAP MDG, S4HANA very specifically for BDS instance, and BW for HANA, right? Now that pretty much takes care of everything. Daci and Vortex and Vim, just extensions, right? We do have a few other extensions. Obviously, NextLabs is another one from a technology foundation standpoint. And right up top, right, whether it's the sourcing side, it is the delivery or the quality side. We got multiple demand systems we just talked about, and down below, right, from a receiving side and accounting side, we have other applications that we are integrating to. And part of our goal is, right, anything that you see in the gray boxes here, relatively over the course of the transformation are going to be retired and then mostly converged into SAP, except for 1 or 2 applications, right? Which we specifically are not naming the application purely because of internal controls, not to share all of these details. And so kind of gives you this lay of the land from an application architecture standpoint. Go to the next slide. Okay. And this is where, Tony, feel free to jump in, Ryan, because we got payback constructs and this zero trust architecture constructs here. So if you go to the next slide, kind of gives you, how a typical airbag controlled policy architecture looks like. We got 4 pillars in here. Most of you probably know, but I can briefly go through this. 4 pillars being policy administration engine, policy enforcement engine, and the policy decision engine, right? And once you administer the policies. And then, right, you also need to have all the information coming through from a PIP standpoint, policy information enter engine, right? So you've got either the user sources or the application related information that you would want to pull through, and then formulate your policies in the policy administration, go through the workflow and get all of the policies fine-tuned and approved between IT and business, and then relatively publish them for consumption, right? In the decision engine, and then the enforcement points are all the applications that you saw in the previous slide, where you can go out and plug in and say, every time a user is trying to access information or so on so type, go ahead and make sure you run the check against the policy decision engine and get the allowed denied construct that you see on the right side. Right? So pretty straightforward when you take and peel this onion around the constructs. And so, and it's approved framework, right? And it's pretty standard in the industry now, and everybody is leaning on it. And if you take any of our CSPs today and the cloud application, cloud solution providers, right? All big three, right? They do have constructs of policy-based access control natively built into that engine sticker and make sure at an infrastructure level or any resource level you can apply to that. And then you also have similar constructs and applications that platform vendors on the software side have also started layering in within the platform space, right? For example, you're looking at marketing, sales and marketing space, in Salesforce, they would want to, they're working through that, right? And any of our other SaaS solutions, they're all looking to introduce the same construct directly into the platform. But the whole idea here, right, when we started this journey in 2017, right, the whole ABAC construct was a little foreign to almost all the industry versus where we are at and what problems we had. We said, the journey we wanted to start. Go to the next slide, please. And this is again one level below, right? How I gave a high level view of what does the policy mean and so on and so forth. You see that users access application, and the users could be anybody as in an implementation user when you go through this transformation journey, or a production user. And then you can go and segment them to business users versus IT users. And then you take that pool and say Boeing and non-Boeing. In your case, it could be your firm versus non-Boeing. And then US versus non-US, or you have country-specific attributes, right? And then you can also go back and say whether you want to use geographical region or a division. Any of the dimensions against the users that you want to kind of slice and dice. And you also want to go and say, hey, my countries, these are relatively kind of blocked, for to say, right? Any dimensions from a user standpoint, you want to choose as a reference to construct policies that is on the user side. Environments, again, right? You can use any of these dimensions that are listed below, or you can add other dimensions. And then the resource attributes, right? Which is again the information that the users are accessing in SAP, right? Typically, it's master and transaction data objects and some level of reference data that the users tend to access, whether it's in the implementation side or even on the production support side, right? And that's where it becomes very important. What are they accessing? How do we tag the information, right? And so on and so forth. And the action is very clear, right? Typical CRUD actions, create, read, update, delete, and such, right? And you have different labels here. When you take all of this and say, hey, this looks very familiar in the concepts of any applications that you build and how you bear in application security using role-based access control. This is where, right, role-based access controls have some level of constraints or limitations that come through. And the limitations are on how when you try to scale that kind of role-based access control across so many dimensions that you're seeing here, it becomes very hard and very inflexible. And it almost requires a huge team from an application security standpoint to manage this master and child related role metrics. And at a certain point, it becomes very hard or unsustainable to manage, right? So when we say, hey, how do we solve the inherent constraints or pain points of role-based access control, then what we have is the next level of maturation in the industry is now how about we just make this as a script or a policy base And the policies-based action controls next framework is the whole ABAC or PBAC, which is what this particular slide relatively reflects. And then is the standard around it, right? So when you take whatever I just shared at the bottom and then roll up through a use case, right? And I kind of read the use case, and in your organizations, right? I'm pretty sure you can build 10 use cases to make this very hard, from enabling security at the application layer level, especially when the data by itself is spread across different compliance buckets. That's like what you're seeing in the resource attributes here, right? So that is the construct which we had said, hey, all of this apply to us. These are all conversations we had back in 2017, 18, when we said, how we evaluate. We did a large scale POC, at least 2 POCs, right? And then we launched into it for adoption into this particular program. Next slide, Tony, thank you. This gives you a little bit of overarching view of how we are set up to run our transformation program. Typical N and N+1 environment per se, right? As you see in the bottom, right? There is an N landscape for break systems assignments, and nothing out of the ordinary, especially in SAP enabled transformation projects, right? And then we have dev, queue, and prod. So the construct, at least where at when we went live, is because of the fact there are use cases which you want to test using real data. We had an environment in the QA, a dark blue one, where teams were or the light blue one, right? Now where only Boeing and Boeing users were allowed to go and operate based upon what the compliance rule set was. And then there was another environment for everybody else, right? Who's implementing Boeing, non-Boeing, US and non-US to leverage global talent to go and address this. Where we have obfuscated data through other techniques. But what we have also now introduced is NextLabs has data obfuscation capabilities. So I'll highlight that. And you got the prod team too. And then up in the top, we are using SAP S activate methodology to go execute on it. And as you see, right, the distribution of the talent per se, we got US and non-US teams across the activate phases that you see. For the first 3 phases, right, all the way to build, we want to definitely leverage global talent, and that's why you see global teams operating on the implementation side. And then we also see that right from test and deploy, right, we are a US-based team. And we are changing that as we speak for the second phase of the recruitment solution because of maturity of capabilities directly with NextLabs with obfuscated data obfuscation now available. So again, this gives you the layout what methodology we are using, how our capacity of the teams for implementation as well as support is set up, and then where we are obfuscating data to make sure we got implementation teams refine and build qualitative solutions. And then we also have some restrictive environment where non-Boeing users have, and we are trying to fix that as part of, we're going to address that as part of the next slide, Troy. So this kind of gives you what I was sharing, a view of how we have structured and applied NextLabs policy-based or attribute-based access control framework, right? Just like how I was sharing, RBIT doesn't go away for any application security constructs that you need to enable. You have to embrace that and set up typical that set of applications, set of users with different acts, and the only way to tie them both is through app roles, and you will add users and then the actions the users perform on this information that they access and do their day-to-day operations. ABAC is a complementary or supplementary layer on top of that to address the restrictions or constraints you have with RBAC controls, especially when you have so many dimensions you need to apply and dynamically manage them at runtime versus design time. And then if you look at how we layered in, right? When we say, hey, the dimension, as we said, from users versus applications per se, you see that level 1 versus level 2 versus level 3 with the structure or policy. Hey, is it BDS users or a non-BDS user? In this case, the non-BDS could be BGSG or other enterprise functions. And then US versus non-US. And then we also have within that, right, Boeing versus non-Boeing. And where is the non-Boeing person accessing information from and so on and so forth. And level 3, as you see, right, we operate at programs, right? In the A&D space, almost all companies have programs that they use as a reference to relate to run their business, right? So program is the third level of dimension we have added. And when you use all of these constructs, and we have significant amount of policies we use as a reference to design, apart from tagging. So that is how we layered in RBAC controls. That's part of standard SAP, and then ABAC controls. And the biggest advantage, right, with NextLabs, right, if anybody has a question around it, hey, why NextLabs? I think NextLabs have invested about 10 to 15 years in terms of building ABAP and Java-based enforcement point code repository that comes with this particular add-on solution that seamlessly integrates with the policy administration engine and so on and so forth. That was a big differentiator for us, right? So if you go back to the construct, either we go build all that application code in S4, MDG, BW, or the whole suite of SAP application suite by investing ourselves, and it's very hard because the NextLabs solution is directly plugged into the basis kernel by frustrating the policy decisions into the applications as the user accesses. Either we could build out ones, or we could also go out and say, hey, is there anybody who has done this at scale in terms of building code? And then we just import them and then start testing, right? Typical out of the box plugin, go out and refine or enhance and then execute on it, right? So those concepts relatively helped us to choose NextLabs to go and be our partner in this particular journey of enabling our policy-based access controls, an important dimension for zero trust architecture. And then run on a few other concepts that are also part of the zero trust architecture framework. We are working in parallel. But definitely right now, this whole readiness and maturity of the tool set case is quite helpful. Stop here, and I think that's about the slides. Tony, after you.
Yeah, thanks, Deepak. Yeah, and Deepak touched on several of the things that NextLabs is doing with Boeing. Again, we consider it it's a great relationship that we have, and we're definitely invested in building that and helping Boeing in whatever way we can. So for those of you who may not know as much about NextLabs, just a brief overview to make sure that that everyone knows sort of where we're coming from. In addition, so we have we're a worldwide company, locations in the U.S. as well as in overseas, headquarters in the U.S. And we have many customers like Boeing, who are the large, Fortune 100 companies, and as well as government and and military customers as well. We also have a number of strategic partners that we work with to deliver our solutions. In the case here with Boeing, we also work with Accenture um, on on this project. And then we also have a number of industry partners like NIST, for example, where we have worked with them to help develop standards and just move general industry to adopt higher data security standards. Um, so mention our solutions here, but I'm actually going to jump ahead to the next slide to talk about our four main parts of our product portfolio. The central piece is Cloud AZ, which is our unified policy management platform, and that's where we provide the centralized policy enforcement with our dynamic authorization engine. So this is the part of our product suite that it drives all of the policy enforcement, policy management. It is the central the piece that everything connects to. And then we have the three different enforcer products. So Sky DRM is our product in um, that uses digital rights management to provide persistent protection of files as they are shared when they are on the move. Our application enforcers enforce the policies from Cloud AZ within the application context to protect data and access to applications. And then Data Access Enforcer actually enforces policies at the data access layer. So protecting data at rest in databases whenever they are accessed. Our general approach is really that we help organizations with is number one, knowing what your data is and who needs to access it, and then protecting that data when it's created at the source and within applications. Then protecting the data as well when it's in transit and shared, as well as when it's at rest and when it is used within applications. And then the final two pieces are automating the process of the policy enforcement, just to reduce the likelihood of any gaps or errors, but automating that and then orchestrating the policies as well, so that you have the correct policies being implemented in the correct places. And the final piece that ties this all together is the visibility and analytics piece. So our centralized logging and audit capabilities that allow uh, the organizations that use NextLabs um, to verify that the policies are being enforced correctly. So, so today we were focusing on how Boeing uses NextLabs, but some of the other areas in which our customers use NextLabs, and a lot of times they may cover multiple of these areas. They aren't really distinct, clear buckets or categories. But first one is modernization. Again, Deepak was talking about how Boeing is using NextLabs to help with the modernization project and moving to as they're updating systems and applying consistent authorization and access controls for legacy and new applications. Compliance is a large a common use case for us. So using our products to make sure that whether it's export controls, like our classified data, um, and that is that our customers do use us to enforce and also to demonstrate compliance with such regulations. Um, ERP consolidation and mergers and acquisitions, just those are in the same vein of having a shared system, but then logically segregating the data on those shared systems to make sure that only the correct people are accessing the data that they are authorized to access. The cybersecurity uh, category, so reducing cybersecurity risks. That's where we work closely with NIST to help organizations implement the NIST cybersecurity framework. They've actually, recently the focus has been on version 2.0 of that framework. And we are engaged with NIST and working with them to make sure that we can help organizations implement that. Um, and then trade secrets. This is in addition to data that's controlled by regulations. There's also trade secrets and intellectual property that are a competitive advantage that a lot of our customers want to protect and make sure that um, only authorized people have access to that, even if as they're maybe needed when they're collaborating with other organizations. So controlling access to that data. And then the final piece is automation. So not only cutting costs, but also reducing the likelihood of any um, errors in implementing and enforcing data security policies by automating a lot of that and making them driven by attribute based policies. So that's a very high level overview. I wanted to make sure that we save some time for questions, as I see there's a few questions that have been um, asked in the interface. But also, before we jump into the Q&A, since we NextLabs has worked with Accenture on this project with Boeing, I wanted to pause and see if those who are on the call from Accenture would like to add anything. Um, and again, not putting them on the spot, but just giving them the opportunity uh, to speak as well to this. Um,
Hey, hi Tony. Thanks.
Hi, Harris.
Hey, thanks. So, team, from Accenture point of view, we were part of this implementation, and as Deepak also mentioned, right, there were multiple layers of complexity involved, and we were especially focusing on the RBAC side of it, and also harmonizing with ABAC. It was not an easy task overall. A lot of efforts put in, a lot of complexity behind this. It looks very straightforward, but it is not, as especially the requirements and converting those requirements into technical capabilities. As a product, it's a very seamless product, NextLab. That's why we were able to absorb a lot of complex scenarios during our implementation. So yeah, it was overall it was excellent, successful implementation, I would say, from service delivery point of view, and discussion the different scenarios which was mentioned by Deepak. We included those in our implementation. So yeah, and that's all, Tony, from our side. Thanks, Tony.
Yeah, thanks, Harris. Yeah, and thanks for joining for this call. So now I want to turn to the questions that have been asked. Again, these have been typed out through the Zoom interface. And
Yeah.
so I'm just going to go through in order and just either Deepak or Harris just jump in to answer, as
Mhm.
it makes sense. Um, so first question is how the critical fields within the system were identified. And I'll let Deepak if you want to.
Yeah. So again, when we do this activate methodology construct, right, and we do have each of the phases have their outcomes. And for example, Explore is all about what do we have in standard SAP, and then we also blend in our SAP application portfolio in that. And then relatively, right, the outcome of that is gap breakdown, and then we at that point, and when we start our functional designs in Explore B, right, now this is what we did is slightly different than others. Is typically application role security and the mapping exercise, right, in terms of what is needed from application security comes more typically in middle of the build that test time frame, because every time you see this large execution projects, people focus on solution design. Application security is kind of side on, or at least a adjunct function, right? So what we did is, we said, hey, how do we do typically application security role mapping? We just extended the templates to say, now we need to start capturing what are the sensitive data fields right off the Explore workshop session. And then relatively, once we literally have templates that clearly ask the business needs and teams to identify these attributes so that we can relatively formulate how the design should look like beyond the typical, hey, how do you want to structure yourself from a level 1, 2, 3, and so on and so forth. So easy answer there is right from if you're on this S4 journey and you're using activate methodology, use this typical explore, B, and build and test as the big windows of time and layer in application security ahead of time to make sure you get the best out of what kind of critical fields need to be protected and what dimension relatively influence security design. So that is the main feedback we'll give. Now, if folks are not doing any of that and then, hey, we need to introduce this and layer in, you would have to construct a project to do this exercise. So it is not going to be as simple as IT making up saying, here are my 5 critical fields. This needs to be business owning and saying, these are my 5 critical fields. By the way, rule set is this particular attributes are going to have export control or not. Most of that in a very regulated industry like A&D come through from the engineering side. And there are departments or at least teams in the GPC space or the infrastructure space right now, they all focus on this kind of constructs, except possibly people don't, right? So I think you got to engage the right teams, use these windows of time, focus and move the security constructs to the left and get a lot of that engagement and stakeholders buy-off earlier. So Harrison, you want to add anything?
No, Deepak, you covered all of them. Thanks.
Yeah.
Great, thanks. Yeah, just going to the next question that I have here. So just like a question is like how long it took to go from the design phase to go live for each application or business process. And then like the second part of that question was whether the attributes for the evaluation were sourced from a third-party application or were they stored in SAP?
Yeah, for us it's all in SAP, and as I said, right now we use this transformation vehicle engine to go and introduce this concept. It's not like we embarked on this NextLabs or database-based access control as the primary goal of this project, right? So we layered it in such a way that it's integral part of the larger project phase. So for us, right, EDP, because of how our complex processes are structured and how teams need to come together, it's about a 2-year engagement, which we started somewhere in the middle of 21 and all the way to go live about 23 because of so many applications, provisioning information, and so on. But if you start only NextLabs as a project and you had to go do it, sure, now you should be able to do it up here and layer in NextLabs policies and adjust the role-based access controls. 2 different constructs. We just use the transformation roadmap as a vehicle to introduce technology to solve our problems.
Great, thanks. Yep. Yeah, next question was whether MDG is used as the data catalog. How do you flag the data that needs to be under ABAC?
Yeah, so MDG is not, right? I mean, say, there is nothing out of the box in SAP to go and say, if I have a semantic foundation, right, to go and say, for example, if you go back to data dictionary, it doesn't matter whether it's MDG or GTS, wherever the information models exist, or the information objects, in this case, master and transaction data objects. Understand, right, in the master data that pretty much drives a lot of these rules on the transaction data space. Semantically tagging them, there's nothing out of the box. So one thing that NextLabs portfolio does allow you, they have built add-on solutions to go and relatively identify which attributes you would want to go and tag. And that's what you configure as part of the design. And the input of what attributes to tag relatively comes through all that exercise I was just sharing. I think, this is going to evolve as information attributes out of the box are available. I hope SIP is going to extend and allow us to go ahead and tag, and which is one of the dimensions we are pushing to, right? Data classification and tagging is something a work in progress even for us. I assume it's the same for a lot of companies to know what is the right way to go and tag semantically, and which attributes need to have what. Not a great answer, but that is a constraint within the application portfolio where we are at in the journey.
Right, thanks. One question that was already answered, but I just wanted to also mention it live was what BDS means, and that's Boeing Defense Space and Security Division. Just since that acronym was used. Yep. So there's a question about one that I'll go ahead and answer here about whether about firefighters or ERP systems administrators, U.S. persons, or is NextLabs used to mass data for these users? And the answer is that the NextLabs solution can also be used to cover firefighter and admin users, and can be used to mask non-US admin users. Another quick question that was asked is whether the tools are compatible with Office 365, and the answer is yes. Just making sure we try to get to all the questions. Another question is, what type of data elements are being obfuscated or specifically controlling access to an S4 with NextLabs? For example, like materials, bombs, routing, etc.
Yeah, typical, right? I mean, again, if you look at master data, is that you start saying, hey, what are the elements that relatively need to be masked? Harris, right? You might want to add in how many attributes on our metal mass record that we actually have been identified as saying either masked or fully protected versus obfuscated. You have the detail, right? But the whole idea, to your point, is the exercise starts at the master data level, identify attributes that relatively need to be worked through, and go from there. Harris, you want to add in?
Yes.
How many attributes we are doing at an information service level?
Correct. So there were two data layers which we identified, right? Also, Deepak, he already mentioned about this. One was the transactional data on day-to-day basis, and also the challenges we had as we move towards the QA environment, the obfuscation data. So and also there are also a lot of complexity when it comes to data, because this whole it's a data-centric solution. If you look at it, and also we looked at multiple layers, identifying from the compliance point of view, and also from internal. So it's all PII data and also export control data, also company codes, and different programs sitting in the same system. So we have segregated and control those level of data. So there was, and also depending on the geographic locations, right? We control the geographic location data. So multiple layers of data being restricted here through this, and it's a seamless process. Means technically it's complex when we look at the data, but it's a seamless process. End of the day, users are not able to see that data, and the multiple users can sit in the same environments. And but as I mentioned, right, there are two layers. Obfuscation is one of the layer, and there is transactional layer. So we worked on those two layers.
Yeah, one question I saw right on about IAM infrastructure IS store. The answer is yes. It's a different identity IAM infrastructure that we have, and then integrates. And the whole idea here, right? And the APIs are all built within the NextLabs portfolio to source information from the IAM space. Again, Tony or Harris, you can add in. From a policy information point, right? I think we did build a common API and then a lot of user-based strategies for Boeing. So that really came from that, right?
Right. And then we have one more open question I see that hasn't been answered, which actually then brings us up right against the end of the hour as well. But question about where the systems are located and how that impacts what Boeing uses, how Boeing uses NextLabs. So, and then a final point on that is whether that is obfuscated at rest.
Yeah. So when you say systems located, as in where are they hosted, I'm assuming, right? Now, in that case, now we are hosting on CSPs. I don't want to disclose now where we are hosting, right? It's all in the US right now. The location impact, what you do with NextLabs, right? Again, this is a federated model, right? And policy administration centrally managed in the application portfolio where you apply the policies to, right? So laws of physics at certain point makes sense, right? You want them to be very closely located, or your network pipeline is very big to avoid performance hazard because there is round trips. Obviously, NextLabs have done a great job and end up having policies covered and all, but at the end of the day, it co-hosting as close as possible needs better performance. Is data obfuscated at rest? Yes, we do. Thanks.
Right. Thanks. I think that's most of the open questions. So I'm just remind everyone again, just since we are about out of time. First of all, thanks again to Deepak and to Harris for joining us today. I mean, this is we really appreciate the time, and also we really appreciate the ongoing partnership from NextLabs perspective. As a reminder, we will be sending out a link to a recording of the webinar to everyone who registered. So we will need to do a little bit of post processing, but then we'll make that available and we'll send out the link as soon as it's available. Just since we are at the end of the hour, give Deepak and Harris any a last opportunity to close this out. But again, just want to express appreciation from NextLab's side that you've joined us here today.
Yeah, just only one item, right? Tony, thank you very much for taking time to join this webinar, right? I really appreciate and thanks for the patience for listening through this webinar, right? I hope it really helped everybody who joined in terms of answering most of your questions. That's all I have. Thank you very much.
I'll continue with that. Thanks, Tony. Thanks, NextLabs team. It has been really a good working experience with your whole team, and really appreciate this webinar. I'm sure it will help a lot of our clients to understand this more in depth and real life scenarios, which Deepak mentioned, right? And being a successful implementation, we are really proud of it. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks to the NextLabs team. I forgot about that. Hey, Tony, always great partnering with NextLabs team here. And the journey we have gone through, right? And the NextLabs team have been extremely good in terms of how they partnered and helped us through. We obviously go through ups and downs through the cycles, but the outcome was always good, and we continue to partner to really scale the solution. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Yep. Yes, so thanks everyone again for joining. And everyone should receive a follow-up from us in the near future. But with that, I will close out today. Yeah, thanks for everyone for joining. We really appreciate it. Take care.